Hello everybody, my name is Elijah. Welcome to 85 Studios YouTube. I'm on the phone with Linn. This will be our 6th episode, I believe, or 7th episode. She's in Kansas. And she's telling I think it would be the final part. Would it be the final part of her story? Linn, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I am going to go ahead and just let you take it away so that we're just not gonna further ado our audience. We'll let you take it away. And where did you leave off?
That I had my children's father had passed away, and he was my first ex-husband, and I had made sure that he had been properly buried with a full military honors. And that would have been in August of, well, I prefer not to give the year, but anyway, it was in, actually it was in September, the end of September, and it was on my oldest son's birthday. And it's been difficult, for us every time, because we've got his death on the same day that my oldest son's birthday is on. So we had to make a lot of adjustments on that. But what ended up happening the day that he was killed in a car wreck, was one of my sons was at work on that evening shift, and he confided in me later in that day, after he found out that his dad died, that he was working, and he said that looking at his employee talking to him, and he looked behind the guy, and there was his dad standing there, and he was waving at him and saying, "Hi, son. Hey, son." And it kind of shocked him, because he was like, "Well, what are you doing here?" It really confused him. And then he said for several weeks after that, he would be doing his job, and that kind of stuff. And he'd hear, "Hey, son. Hey, son." And he'd look around, and there was not supposed to be anybody else there. And he thought at first that it was his fellow employees playing jokes on him, and he was like, after about the second time, he was like, "This is not funny." And he'd look around the store that he worked at the time, look in the aisles and different things like that. And he was like, "There's nobody here." It would be like nobody there. He said he didn't tell me anything about that for a really long time, because it just really freaked him out. And even though he had been living in the house and he'd seen all of these different things go on, he really never experienced a lot of what my other 3 children had. Like, he hadn't seen any kind of shadows or other spirits physically. He hadn't seen any of these things, and it really shocked him. But and as far as the other stuff goes, I don't know. He kind of had the attitude and personality of, well, this is how life is, and I'm just gonna. He was always upbeat kind of person, just he had a natural upbeat personality, and he was like, well, this is how it is. Oh well, I've got stuff to do. See you later. Bye. And he never really came to me with any real issues. as far as like the other three, you know, Mom, this thing has come bugging me in my room, or Mom, there's a little girl that keeps coming to my room at night, or, you know, he never had any of the scary things, you know, like the sheets being pulled over him.
Which one of your sons had seen the little girl?
That was the oldest son. My oldest son and my youngest son both.
Both of them, okay.
My oldest son had it happen to him when he was in that room, and the one bedroom. Huh?
Was it the same room that they had both? One of them.
Yeah.
You said they were sharing a room. One of them moved out of the room, or?
Yeah, the oldest one had moved out, and then the youngest one moved into that room, took it over. And when he was, and this was years later. I mean, there was probably about 5 years later, when the oldest one moved out, the youngest one moved in. But when they saw the ghost, there was about a 5 years difference, and it was the same little girl. He described it to a T.
Wow.
And she would come out of the wall. I mean, literally, they would watch her come out of the wall, and then she would disappear back into the wall. But with my second son, he had some pretty terrifying things with that he had experienced with her, in that she went from being this cute little girl to almost this demon-like face.
Wow.
And it terrified him a lot, to the point to where he started actually sleeping in the living room on the floor rather than sleeping in his room. So then at that point in time, my first husband had passed away. My second husband, I had divorced. And things really escalated as far as it was like a streak of really, really bad luck that just suddenly hit our house. My son was laid off of his job, and he was about to lose his apartment, so I ended up moving him into the house. My second son, he was losing his apartment, and even though he worked full time, he was also going to college, and he was looking around for another place. He couldn't find any place that he could actually afford. So I was like, well, you know, I've got a bedroom open if you want it. So he moved in. So suddenly I had all three of my sons home. And what ended up happening was my youngest son, he was getting harassed really, really bad in that bedroom. I mean, things had really, really gotten bad. It was pulling him out. Whatever this was, there was something that was actually pulling him out of the bed by his foot. It was like grabbing his foot and pulling him out of the bed, and constantly waking him up by touching him, inappropriately touching him at times. And he was like, you know, I can't deal with this. I don't know what's in that room, but I can't. So that's when he actually, between the demon girl coming out of the walls and something yanking and pulling on him and touching him in inappropriate ways, he was like, I'm done with this room. I'm not sleeping in it. So he ended up sleeping in the middle of the living room. I had decided to, I went back to sleeping on the couch. I could not sleep in that master bedroom. That scary creature that I had seen that was all scarred up and stuff like that, looked like he was, honestly, it looked like a bloated body.
Yeah, I was just getting ready to say it from what you described. A bloated dead man, walking dead man.
Yeah. I had seen him again, and I was like, that's it. So I was sleeping on the couch in the living room. And, of course, we had continued to keep lights on in the house, in the kitchen and in the hallway. And then suddenly the hall light, for whatever reason, it just quit working. I put in a new bulb, nothing worked. So I ended up, I was like, fine, I'm getting rid of that. Never could figure out what was wrong with it. Electrician came in, looked at it. He would have it working fine, and then it would just quit. No reason. Couldn't find a reason. So, but the kitchen light still worked. So, and I was shocked. I was like, what just scratched me? And the scratch marks were deep. And it wasn't actually till I woke up that I felt the burning sensation. And I mean, it burned. It wasn't stinging, it was a burn.
Was this during the
and it was
daytime that this happened?
Yes, this was daylight. This was daylight. 2 of my sons were actually home. My oldest was on the computer in the living room, which was about 1.5 feet from the couch where I was sleeping. The other one was in a chair, just about 5 feet from where the front of the couch was. And he was playing some kind of game or something that he had. And I had laid down and had gone to sleep, and neither one of them knew anything or saw anything happen. My feet and legs were covered up. Everything was covered up with a sheet. And I can't remember, one of them made a noise, and that's what actually woke me up. And when I got out, when I went and pulled his covers back, I noticed blood on the sheet. My leg had been laying like up. What I used to do to keep the thing from pulling my covers off is I kind of tucked them up around me, underneath me. And the sheet part that I had covered, tucked up underneath my feet, had blood on it, and fresh blood on it. And yeah, when I looked, I had 3 they were about 1 inch long, all 3 of them, and they were very, very, very deep. And it took me a while. I had to put pressure on my leg to stop the bleeding. And it took forever. It took weeks for it to heal. And they looked like claw marks. They literally looked like thick claw marks. I couldn't believe that I didn't feel that happen to me. That didn't wake me up. And that, here's 2 sons right there in the same room a foot to 5 feet away from me, never saw anything. Well, that's when, like I said, I had almost exhausted my list of churches. I mean, I was going down every faith, you know, trying to find a pastor or someone. And finally I got to the Catholics. And I called and got an answering machine, and then I called again, and I kept calling them, and finally I got a hold of someone, and it was the actual priest that answered the phone. And I started out with, look, I have called every church that I can possibly call. You guys are the last church that I could possibly think of that might help. But I've got a really serious problem going on with my family, and I need to talk to you. I need to talk to you. So I was telling the priest, I kept saying, you know, please don't think I'm crazy. I'm not crazy. Something is attacking my family. And he was really, really kind. I mean, just talking to him, just I knew that he would be the one to help. Just the way he talked to me. And he told me, he said, I want you and your family to come in right away. Right away. So I got everybody together. A couple of days later, we had to work out work schedules and on and on and on. Took us a couple of days to get everybody together, regroup, went in there, and we started telling him everything that had happened and everything that was going on. And he explained to us that there are no such thing as ghosts, but there are demons. And I showed him the scratch marks on my leg, and he didn't say anything. He was like, but, you know, you could see in his face, he was like, okay. And I started telling him about what had happened to my middle son being just yanked out of the bed, and my firstborn son being, you know, attacked, and my youngest son having been attacked, and now I was being attacked. And by the time we were done, he basically, he said, started talking to us about prayer, and I had told him, you know, what I was praying, and he handed me this little booklet of prayers. He handed all of us this little booklet of prayers. And then he had us go into this room, and he handed us this bottle of holy water. And he also blessed a crucifix and gave it to us. And I had, years earlier, had a friend go to Italy. And she went to the Vatican, and she asked me, she said, is there anything you want? And I said, can you please get a rosary that's been blessed by the Pope? They sell rosaries outside of the Vatican, but they are not blessed. You have to go into the Vatican to get the blessed one by the Pope. So she had given me that, and I had put it away, and kept it as a keepsake, really. And he told us to go around the house to bless ourselves with the holy water and say the prayers that were in the booklets and use the crucifix and go around and bless the house. Doing this, you know, sprinkling the holy water around and that sort of stuff. But he did not want to come into the house with us. I mean, he wasn't going to come to the house and bless it. He was basically having us do it. And I was disappointed. I was very disappointed. But, you know, I figured, okay, well, he's given us the tools, I guess and he's told us how to do this, so I guess that's what we'll do. So, we got home and we started doing this, and honestly, it didn't really seem to help. It really didn't. I mean, things would calm down for a little bit, but it was still really, really bad. And that's the other thing, that the smells in the house. You would walk in the house, and sometimes the house would just smell nice and clean like it normally did, and other times it would smell like rotting meat. And you go and you look in the trash and say, oh, you know, did somebody throw away something that was bad, you know, knowing full well that they hadn't. But you're double checking everything anyway. And because at that point in time, I've got 3 grown sons. They buy their own stuff, you know, they buy their own food. You just don't know. So, but there was never anything in the trash like that. So you're checking other places, going, you know, did a mouse die in the house? Something, you know, or something that died under the house. Something that died under the house somewhere, you know, crawled in there and died. No, there's nothing there. Looking in the crawl space, can't find anything. Not really wanting to go under that crawl space and fully explore, not because we're afraid of demons or anything, but it's also got snakes and spiders and things like that. You just, you know. So, I got to the point where, you know, after doing thorough search, couldn't find anything, opening as many of the door and the windows and different things, trying to get it aired out, and all of a sudden it would just disappear. It would disappear, and I'd shut the windows and everything else, and it wouldn't come back. It might be a day or two later, and it'd come back. You'd smell it again. And that kept going back and forth. I mean, sometimes you would smell it all day. Other days you wouldn't have it. Like the next day, it wouldn't be there at all. And it just kept happening like that. And then on top of that, I started noticing in like the doorway that went from the living room to the kitchen, and in the hallway, bathrooms, weird, clear stuff that was, it was like, I mean, it was kind of like some sort of condensation. It was clear, liquid stuff, but there was no reason for it to have that. There was no reason for it to be doing that. I mean, and it would be like on the wall, and it would just be like somebody had dripped clear fluid on the wall. Like it was coming down like the walls had pores or something, you know, and there was fluid coming out of them. And it would harden up and crust up, and then I would be able to flick it off, and it was like hard crystals. And I couldn't figure out what this stuff was. I was like, what in the world is this? I mean, it wasn't coming down like over the doorways enough to really actually like drip on you and be gross and nasty, but it was like oozing through the not just the doorway, but the actual door frames as well. That was really started. I was already creeped out. I was freaking out. Our sprig of bad luck that we were having. My house insurance suddenly notified me that I needed to completely re-roof my house, you know, in order to comply with their new insurance policies. And I was like, I don't have the money to do that. I called several people to try to get that done, you know, getting estimates, and yeah, $5,000-$6,000. No, I didn't have that. And they were threatening if I didn't do it that they would cancel my insurance. Well, that would mean that my mortgage would be, I would be in default of my contract to keep insurance on my house because I was still paying on it. And so I was terrified that I was going to lose my house. And in the meantime, I've got, you know, this thing attacking my kids and attacking me, and this junk oozing out of my walls, and basically I ended up, I was still sick. I'd had the surgery. It was supposed to correct everything, and it wasn't working. And I was still trying to go to work to keep my job. And one day I woke up and I felt like death. I mean, I felt so bad. I thought I was just going to pass out. And I was like, oh my God, I can't go. I can't miss another day. I can't. So I went to work, and I was about an hour into my job, and all of a sudden it felt like I couldn't breathe, and my heart felt like it was going to explode. I mean, literally, it felt like it was going to explode, and I thought I was going to pass out. And the job that I had, I was near it was one of those places where it was a nursing home, but it was a skilled nursing home. And I hollered at one of the nurses, and she looked at me and she says, oh my God, what's wrong? I mean, I guess I must have been really, really pale. And I said, I think I'm going to pass out. And she grabbed one of the automatic BP cups that has the O2 sensors and all of that sort of stuff on it, and put it on me and started checking my heart. And it was giving out. I was going into full-blown heart attacks. I don't remember too much else. The next thing I know, I'm being rushed in, EMTs are taking me away and shoving, God, he shoved the biggest freaking needle I'd ever felt in my life in my arm. And it was really weird. I was so bad that I didn't really feel it. I should have been screaming in pain. And I was so downhill that when your oxygen level and everything else is going down, your body kind of gets to this numb feeling, like you really can't feel anything. Yeah. And I guess maybe that would be kind of like it is. It's just you just don't feel anything. And I was still fairly alert to remember those kind of things, but they said, I remember them calling on their radio and saying she's going into heart failure, and then there was a little bit of something about it. I would prefer not to give her that, just simply because I'm afraid that we'll lose her, which that freaked me out a little bit. I was like, oh crap, I'm going to die. And so I was praying to God. I was like, okay, God, you put me through all of this stuff, and I've really worked hard to try to be an awesome person and take care of other people. And if you take me, please make sure that you take care of my children, please. And if you're going to send me to hell, well, honestly, that's not much different than what I've been going through. I'm ready to go either way. And anyway, they stabilized me, and they saved my life. I ended up, I had to go to a heart specialist. I had to take time off of work. I had to take family medical leave. My HR person rode my case every single solitary minute of that day. Every single solitary day. She was just like, when the doctor wrote out for the medical leave stuff, she called me, that's not good enough. I need more specifics. You need to go back over there and tell him I need more specifics. And and I'm over here, the doctor, the specialist, to go see him, it was going to be a month. So I was off work, no pay for a month. No, and then at the same time, I've got the insurance company threatening me, and then like I said, I've got all of this other stuff going on, and now I've had a heart attack. And the thing is that it's not the normal type of heart attack. It's an off the wall, like they can't figure out why I had this heart attack. Like, on a physical level, I was about 110 pounds. I'm 5'6". I'm healthy. I exercise. I'm active. I'm in my mid-40s. Everything was fine. I had had a full physical not more than 3 months earlier. No reason for this. So they're thinking, maybe there's a genetic disorder, maybe there's something else going on. And I couldn't tell them. I could not tell them, look, my house is haunted and attacked, and, I couldn't tell them any of this. So, anyway, I'm laying there resting, waiting on this doctor specialist. And I start hearing voices. and I start seeing spirits, and they have like white lights around them, and I can hear them just as plain as I can hear my children. And I realized that it's like but it's not comforting. It's not peaceful. It's like it honestly, it felt like death waiting for me to die. And the voices were calling my name. And I mean, it'd be like, yes, come to us. Well, you know, you can, you know, you're one of us. You're one of us now. Be one of us. You'll be one of us now, kind of thing. And I kept saying, no, I'm not one of you. I'll never be one of you. I'm going to fight this. I'm going to get strong. I'll never be one of you. Go away. Leave me alone. And they didn't. I mean, it took a really long time to get in to see this cardiologist, and then all the testing and stuff, they just ran me through test after test after test, and basically I never really got a total diagnosis. They said that my heart, for whatever reason, they diagnosed me with supraventricular tachycardia, cardiorhythmia, cardiosyncope, and sudden heart failure. I mean, but their thoughts were that there was, for some reason, my heart was not sending the right messages to my brain, or the brain wasn't getting the right messages to the heart, and so that's why I was having all this stuff happen. And my blood pressure stayed continually at it was like 60 over 50, 70 over 60, kind of. So that then I had hypotension, not hyper, but hypotension, right, low blood pressure. And so they gave me some medication to help with that, and ordered me to have a high salt sodium diet. Yeah, supraventricular tachycardia and cardiosyncope, and I mean, like there's like four. Basically what it meant was that my heart, for whatever reason, they don't know, suddenly just quit beating like normal people, and for whatever reason, it would just suddenly stop or fail to beat. They call it sudden death syndrome, because the heart just suddenly stops beating. But, you know, it's never done that since. Now I have, well, when I was still in that house, I would have fainting spells, and I would have severe issues with the heart throughout the entire time I was there. I never stopped working. The doctor never took me off work. He put me on this medication that was supposed to help with all of this stuff. Put me back to work. My HR lady actually told me that if I had any restrictions, she would not allow me to come back to work. So I had to make sure that my doctor wrote no restrictions, or she was not going to allow me to go to work. In other words, I would be fired. And I got all of that taken care of. I explained that to my doctor. He just kind of looked at me like, you need a different job. It's like, good luck with that. I live in a small town. There isn't very many places to work. So, as far as the house situation goes, I did lose my house insurance. But they put me on some kind of government insurance thing that covered the house but not the roof. It had to be a specific level as far as my insurance company goes, and as far as my mortgage company goes, it had to be a certain level of insurance, like level 1, 2, 3. This had to be to their specific level, and it was. So they accepted it, so I managed to keep my house. As far as the house, fixing it up and that kind of stuff, we did manage to get it looking fairly decent. And a lot of the knocking and stuff stopped. Knocking from underneath the house stopped. There was still a lot of other stuff going on, but at that point, if one thing stopped, that was a bonus.
So that knocking, let me ask you, remember you said that you were hearing knocking from the attic originally, and then later you were hearing it from, were you still hearing the knocking from both places at the time, or?
Well, over the years, the loud bangs and stuff that we would hear in the attic area didn't happen as often. The sounded like someone walking on walking in the attic. That stopped. The scratching, like sound like birds or something, that stopped. The banging would occasionally still happen, but not as often. In fact, it was very rare to hear it. Now when we were fixing up the house, that got worse, but then it stopped when we quit fixing up the house, when we were done. Those things that looked like spirits that were glowing, those went away, left me alone eventually. The oozing on the house, inside the house, that was still going on, but not as bad. Things just, we were still using the holy water and the crucifix, and I had brought out the crucifix from Rome and put it there in the house as well, and we're still using the stage and using the Bible verses. But there was so many other different things that were still going on. My sons and myself, we still slept in the living room. There was still that frightful that very, very frightening, horrifying, like frightening feeling that, man, it wasn't just being watched. It was like somebody was going to hurt you. It was threatening. That was still very much there. And not just me feeling it, but all of us were feeling it. And you'd go into the hallway to go to one of the rooms, especially if it was nighttime, and even sometimes in the daytime. It didn't really matter after a while. And you just find yourself feeling like you need to run for your life. Even during the daytime. And it even got, I mean, in the living room, in the dining room, it would get bad. And I can remember my oldest son finally found a job. He was working evenings. My middle son, he had switched his hours, so he was working earlier in the evenings and then getting off earlier in the morning. And my youngest one had gotten, well, he had a girlfriend. He found a girlfriend, and so he was leaving in the evening hours more to visit with her. And I would be sitting there at home trying to watch a movie on the computer and stuff, and all of a sudden it would just feel like something was running at me to attack me, and I would literally run out of the house and sit on the porch because it was safer to be outside than it was in the house. And I would wait and pray that one of my sons would come home. And I never liked to be alone in that house. I never did. Because every time I was alone in the house, something would happen to me. Something like that would happen. And one day I can remember I was alone in the house, and I was exhausted. I was working. I was still dealing with exhaustion from my heart issues. My energy levels had dropped way down. I was still feeling sick from the sinus stuff. And I was laying down a lot. I was resting a lot. I wasn't taking care of the house as well as I had been. I wasn't taking care of myself as well as I had been. I was exhausted. And I remember I laid down, I fell asleep. And my youngest one had a tennis match. He was going to go play with some of his friends. And he left. And I kind of remember as I was laying down, he said, "Mom, I'm going to go play some tennis. I'll be back in a couple of hours. See you later." And nobody else was home. And I was like, I'm just so exhausted. I've got to sleep. So I laid down and I went to sleep. And I don't know, I probably slept a couple of hours, and I woke up and I saw my son, my youngest son that had left for the tennis thing. I saw him walk past me in the living room and go into the kitchen. I saw him playing with Dad. And I walked into the kitchen. I got up and I walked into the kitchen and I said, "Hey, son, how was your day? How was your tennis match? Did you win?" You know. And my son turned around and looked at me. Said nothing, walked right by me, and went to his room. And I was like, well, okay, I guess maybe he didn't win. Didn't say anything. Well, so then I'm going to just leave him alone. He's obviously upset. I'm not going to mess with him. That's kind of how we were around our house, cool off time, and then we'll talk if you want. And about 30 minutes later, here comes my son walking through the front door, the one that was playing tennis. And he was like all happy-go-lucky, "Hey, Mom, I won the team, I want it, telling me about this," and my mouth just dropped. I was like,
Notice anything odd about him the first time you saw him at all?
there was. He looked exactly like my son as far as his shape and his form. His eyes looked a little bit different, but my son's eyes he's got, what do they call it? Hazel blue eyes. So sometimes they'll kind of be almost a steely gray. So he kind of had that steely gray, but it was darker, almost black. And the kitchen, it has a couple of windows, but they don't really get a lot of sunshine. And so sometimes, the color can kind of get thrown off a little bit. So I didn't really think anything of it. He really did. Other than being really, really quiet, my youngest son is a really, really talkative kind of person. If he's quiet, it's because he's sick or something's wrong. At that point in time, he was, active in sports, active in doing stuff. His idea of a good time is to play badminton until you're about ready to drop. Kind of not is it, what's it called? It's called where you hit the ball against the wall with it like a little tennis thing. It's a pretty high geared, like it'll wear you out if you're not in shape kind of game. Yeah. That's his idea of a good time, I can't either. I've personally never played it, but yeah, the thing that you have to remember is prior to me getting really sick and just continuing to get worse and worse and worse, I always, I tried to make things as normal as I possibly could, no matter what was going on in the house. So sports and that kind of stuff, that's our thing. And even for me, the old woman that's had 4 kids, I'm out there in the gym. I'm out there, doing martial arts and doing, doing my thing, because I found that being out of that house, I felt better. Being out and doing other things and being around other people that are good, healthy people to be around, that made me feel better. rather than being stuck inside that house with all of that junk going on. And anyway, I got terminated from my job. I got sick again. I kept getting sick. Went in with the doctor's order. It didn't matter, for these 2 days off that I'd missed, and was terminated. Again, not being a person to let things get me down, no matter what. I went out, and 2 weeks later, I had another job. It wasn't the best job, but it was a job. It was still paying well enough to make the house payments and put food on the table, pay the bills. And it actually paid worse than the one that I lost for a little while there, but it just meant that we were going to have to eat toast instead of cereal for breakfast, kind of thing. So I worked there, and one day I was home, and my son, he was laying on the floor sleeping. I got home. I was working the late shift. That was the other thing. I had to work night shift, which honestly I didn't feel bad about working night shift, because that way I didn't have to put up with the vast majority of the crap that was going on at the house. And anyway, one night I got home, and my son, my youngest was laying on the floor asleep, and he just started screaming in his sleep. I thought he was screaming in his sleep. And he rose up, and he was like, "I'm on fire, I'm on fire, I'm on fire, Mom, I'm on fire." And I was like, "Son, wake up, wake up." And he said, "I am awake, Mom, I'm on fire." And I said, "No, you're not on fire." "Yes, I'm burning, I'm burning, I'm burning." And his eyes were open, and he was looking straight at me, and he was even answering my questions. And I just kept saying, "You're not on fire, you're not on fire. Yes, yes, yes. Look, look, look. There's fire everywhere, Mom. There's fire everywhere. The house is on fire." And I said, "Son, if the house was on fire, I wouldn't be standing in the middle of the living room, and you and I would be outside. Stop. We're not on fire." And it took him, I still don't know if he was sleep talking, or maybe if he was in dreamland. I don't know. I don't know if he'd never done that before. Yeah, except that he was awake. People that I don't know a whole lot about people that sleep talk. I suppose maybe they do answer you. I still don't know a whole lot about that. The stuff that I have found out is for like little kids, they sleepwalk and sleep talk and that kind of stuff, and that kind of stuff. This is my son at that point in time. He was 17 years old, and he'd never done that. He'd never. And anyway, I got him calmed down. I got him to realizing that nothing was on fire, that he was fine, and that the house was not on fire. And I thought everything was good, and all of a sudden he just looked over at me. He was still sitting on the floor. He was looking around the room. His eyes were huge, and all of a sudden he looked over at me and he said, "This house is going to catch on fire, Mom. This house is going to burn." And that did freak me out. Because it didn't even really look like my son. When you looked in his eyes, it was his eyes and his, but it wasn't his look. It was a different look. Now, the thing is that long before we bought the house, there had been a fire in the house. There was still some evidence of that when we were doing some remodeling. You could see there the house had had a fire. It had started in the kitchen. But I didn't have any records that said that anybody had gotten hurt or perished or anything like that. I had nothing like that to go on to really let me know what was going on with that. But I thought it was really, really odd, really freaky, and it did freak me out. And then after he said that, then it was my son again. And I was talking to him, and I said, "Man, you had a really, really bad dream." And he said, "I wasn't dreaming, Mom. I was awake."
Wow.
And I'm trying to think what year it was. In 2013, I think my youngest son came out of his room, and he looks at me and he says, "You need to leave here, because if you don't, something really bad's going to happen to you, and it's going to affect you, and it's going to affect all of us for the rest of our lives." And I was like, "What?" He said, "I had a dream, and it said that you need to leave here, because if you don't, something really bad is going to happen, and it's going to affect you, and it's going to affect the rest of us for the rest of our lives. You need to leave." I was like, "Ain't nothing going to happen to me, you know. I'm having some health issues, but you know, I'm doing all right." Well, my daughter, who had moved clear to another area, a long ways from us, still in Kansas, but in another county, called me the next day, and she was like, "Mom, you need to come up here." I was like, "What are you guys talking about? I need to come up there. I'm fine. You know, what am I going to do with the house? What am I going to do? I just, I have this job," and they had started to pay me a little better. I'd been there a year, and they were paying me a little better. And she said, "Mom, you need to come up here." And she was really trying to talk me into moving up there with her, to be close to her. And I was like, "Well, I'll give it some thought." But I really wasn't willing to move that soon. After having started this other job, and it was my youngest son's graduation was coming up, and I didn't want to just, and I thought about, last time I tried to move, last time I tried to pack, every time I tried to get out of this house, things got really, really bad, and my house would get really, really bad. It was like I just really couldn't leave this house for very long, and certainly not on a permanent level. Well, so I diddled around. I kind of somewhat semi-packed things here and there, but I didn't really, it wasn't in my heart to actually leave yet for some reason. And sure enough, I started packing. As soon as I started packing things, getting a little more serious about it, bad things started happening again. Really, really bad things. Like I said, it was around 2014, and my daughter had been trying to convince me. My son had given me a warning. He'd had a dream. And I wanted to leave, but I kept thinking about all of the things that had happened before every time I tried to leave. So I was kind of like packing things here and there and then waiting for something to happen, and packing things here and there and waiting for something to happen. My oldest son, because of the health issues and stuff that I had, he had decided to try to find a place closer to where I was living. And we were real fortunate. He found an apartment right just down the street from us. And so that was really, really close. And the strange thing was that because of a lot of the stuff that had gotten more serious, and as far as activity-wise goes, it was very rare to actually see him come to the house. More times than not, we would go to his home. Or if he did come to the house, he would stay just very briefly, not very long, and then he'd leave. The other thing that we had started doing was, thanks to the internet, we had started looking at how to use and get EVP and see if we could start photographing some of the evidence of what was going along around in the house. I participated a little bit, but I found that it was so draining on me mentally and emotionally that I found that it was terribly draining for me. And it would just like wear me out to the point to where I would have to stop and just rest for long periods of time. It's actually emotionally draining just talking about all of this. But anyway, I want to talk about it. I want to tell people about it. I want to get my story out there. I want people to know that this kind of stuff is very real. You're not crazy if it's happening to you. It's not crazy to believe it. There's nothing crazy about it. It's not explainable per se, scientifically or what have you, explainable, but there's too many people out there in this world and over the centuries that have seen and experienced this stuff for people to turn around and say that all of those people, all of these centuries, all of these years are all crazy. Just seeing things, mass hysteria, whatever. It's there. It's real. And if you haven't experienced it, or if you would like to experience it, or whatever, I'm going to say that if you haven't experienced it, you're the lucky ones. You're really the lucky ones. And, you know, if you're wanting to experience it, well, I would say go to one of these ghost haunting places or whatever and see if you can figure it out. Just remember that if you do that kind of stuff, you say a protection prayer for yourself first. You never know what's going to follow you back. And then, if you're lucky, it'll go away. You'll be lucky if it goes away on the... But I'm going to tell you, I'm going to continue on with some of the things that happen in the house. So, like I said, I was packing things and trying to, discreetly, I would tell my sons, okay, sons, go and put this in the storage shed. Go and put this, we're not going to be using this anymore. We haven't in years. We're gonna put this away. We're gonna, I was almost like I was trying to trick these spirits into thinking that we were not leaving, and trying not to really talk about it inside the house. As crazy as that sounds, I was trying to get away quietly as I could, making plans to leave. And one night, now I was asleep at the time that this was going on, so I'm going to go off of what my middle son and my youngest son said. Apparently, while we're all asleep, it was probably about 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I started moaning really, really loud. Loud enough that it woke up my middle son. And he started hollering my name, Mom, are you okay? And I wasn't waking up. Yeah, he did. He thought either I was sick or something was going on with my heart or something, We were still on pretty high alert because even though I'd been on this medication, seriously, they had just lost their dad not more than 4 or 5 years earlier. I was the only one they had left. So anyway, I woke up, and as I woke up, my youngest son was, suddenly he just looked over into the kitchen, and the kitchen light that we had on, it grew brighter and brighter and bright. It was almost a blinding bright light.
That same light that was swinging?
The swinging chandelier light, that grew just enormously bright. Now, I had one of those little, they look kind of like a candle flame screw-in light bulbs. They're not, they're like 40 watts. I had a couple of those in those things. There was like 8 little candle holder looking like stems. I had only like 2 or 3 of them in there. So it gave a kind of dull, yellowy look.
Incandescent kind of light.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it was. It was just enough where you could kind of see, where you could see at night, but not so darn bright that it was like in your eyes, in your face bright. And, but this light, I mean, it was blinding light. And I looked over at my son, my middle son, who was laying in the chair, sound asleep. And there was this electrical static. I mean, you could almost hear it, staticky, electrical thing reaching up over towards my son.
Wow.
It was like on his, it was actually, part of it was on his arm. And I started hollering his name, and he wasn't waking up. And so I walked over there and I was like, wake up, wake up, wake up. I was terrified. This thing's right there, but this is my son. Yeah. And he woke up and he immediately moved his arm. He saw it. And he was like, oh God, look. He said that, it disappeared, and he was like, oh God, And he said that he felt like electrical, like something had shocked him throughout his whole hand and arm. It was like an electrical shock. And I told my son, my youngest one, I said, go get your brother. The one, meaning the firstborn son. And he got his shoes on and ran over there and grabbed him. And the reason why I wanted him there was because, again, we had started doing EVPs and that light, it stayed bright, really, really bright in the kitchen. It was still bright even after all of this. We were standing there, we're just kind of watching it, going, oh my God, what's going on here? Honestly, I had years ago watched Poltergeist, the movie Poltergeist, and I was like, great, we're having a poltergeist here. That's just freaking awesome. Yep, they're here, I'm kind of making light of it, but in reality it was terrifying. It really was. I'm making light of it now, but at the time, there was a part of my brain that was going, oh great, there's a poltergeist coming, and at the same time, it was horrific. It was horrific. And I had, so here comes my oldest and my youngest back, and of course by that time, 5-10 minutes, things had dulled down. Things were just dead silent in the house. And of course nobody slept the rest of the night. which really that wasn't an unusual thing to happen. There were a lot of times that over the years, you know, when I was having all my kids and I was younger, I was like, gosh, I'm going to be so glad when they're old enough so that I can actually sleep through the night. Haha. Unbeknownst to me, my kids.
It was a pipe dream.
Unbeknownst to me, I was going to spend the next 20 years as soon as I moved into the house sleeping very, very little. Very, very little. And, my oldest son had with him his EVP stuff and everything like that. And once we all kind of calmed down and, you know, kind of gathered our wits about us, you know, as best as we had learned how to do living in this situation, we started doing EVP sessions and trying to catch stuff and taking photos and trying to catch something, anything.
You guys have sent me one EVP in particular that's very interesting, where your son had done a paranormal session. It says it was in the master bedroom, and it caught a female voice just as loud and clear as could be, say the name Myrna.
Who is here? Tell me your name.
Yeah, yep.
Several photos. I have a folder here that I will go ahead and put at the end of this video here. There's multiple orbs and some kind of entity captured on camera, ascending or floating in the middle of the front room.
Yeah, that particular photo was taken with the entity that was actually taken directly after my middle son had been attacked in that room, where the creature, or whatever it was, whatever that thing was, had grabbed his arm and had the incident where he was in the hallway trying to get it to let go of his arm, because it had a grip on his arm so tight that he said that it honestly felt like it was going to break his arm. It was that powerful a grip.
I guess entity in this picture, it looks like, from looking at it here on my screen, it looks like it most definitely has a face, quite remarkably facial features. You can see an eye, two eyes. It looks like it's got a nose, a mouth. It actually kind of looks quite vicious. It looks like it's smiling almost.
Oh, it probably was very happy. You'll notice that it is partially daylight in there, but you'll also see that there's light. So that basically means, you know, at our point in time, it was just starting to get daylight.
Okay, yeah.
And if you notice, you know, we're already up and moving, and you can see that the house was, at that point, I was washing and cleaning and starting to pack stuff up, because at that point in time, that's when we were starting to do some remodeling on the house, and I was gonna sell it.
Yeah.
I had made several attempts and several throughout the years to try to get out from that house, and every time that we would do that, the activity level would just be so ferocious. And unfortunately, there's probably a lot of people that are asking, well, why didn't you get out sooner? I've explained a lot of times that the little town that I lived in, rent was outrageous. The jobs paid very, very poorly. And and I couldn't afford it. I just really couldn't afford it. The other thing is that I've also explained that the house kept having things happen to it, and it would cost me money every time to fix everything that was going on with it. And now, granted, you know, houses need consistent repairs and different things like that, you know. But these would just be absolutely ridiculous things. Every year it was plumbing. Every year it was something else on top of that. And it was nothing ever was $300 or $400. It was always in the thousands. And so even any money that I did have saved up to try to get out would be gone.
Yeah.
Just, you know, and I mean, there's a lot of things that I'm sure that I probably left out that happened. Some of it, I think some of it is just so traumatic. My brain probably kind of blocked out some of it. But what eventually did happen is, if you remember, I was telling you that earlier in 2014, my son had said I needed to get out of this house.
Yeah.
Well, in May of 2015, I got hurt. I was in an accident. And it disabled me. And I could not work anymore. And I ended up, I had not fallen behind as far as missing a payment, but I had been late with several payments. And even though I'd paid the late charges, after the third time, they sent my check back and told me I needed to contact them immediately, that they had notification of foreclosure.
So they foreclosed on the house.
So, yeah, I lost my home. And that was a really, really bad deal because that meant that I was going to have to pack everything. And the way these spirits or ghosts or whatever you want to call them, demons, the way they acted was going to be really, really bad. It usually was every time. And it was. I don't remember it, but we had just pretty much finished packing stuff in the garage area. I actually had stuff stored up in the garage, some boxes and stuff, and the guys had brought those down, and I was going through that stuff trying to figure out, you know, most of it was like keepsake stuff. And I was like, well, I'm going to be living in a really, really tiny little place. But anyway, so I was like, well, so I'm going to be living in this really teeny tiny little apartment that I found in a different town. It's going to be closer to my daughter, which is what she had wanted anyway last year. I had to have my sons help me to do everything because I was disabled. Their attitudes and personalities, they actually started acting a lot like my first husband and my second husband as far as their attitudes and personalities. Whenever they were in the house, would get worse and worse and worse and worse, and it was scaring me. And I didn't understand it because that's not how my sons acted ever. I raised them. I knew their actions and behaviors. I knew them, but their actions and behaviors toward me were actually, at one point in time, I actually had one get upset because I was talking about I needed him to help me move some boxes, and he stood there and was kicking at the door violently.
Wow.
And it was terrifying because this was actually my younger son. Now, my younger son, he was 6'2" and 250 pounds. He'd been in sports all of his life. He was solid muscle. And I'm telling you, when you've got somebody that big slamming his fist in his feet into a door, that mad, that angry, I was like, just get out of here, leave, leave, leave. I'll take care of it myself. Just go. Get out, get out, get out. And he did. He left. And it was really weird. When he left, he was gone for a few minutes outside, and when he came back, he was fine.
So it was definitely something in that house takes over males' kind of personalities.
Yeah, there were times, especially during that last year when we were trying to get things moved out and stuff like that, when I was going to lose my home, there were times when my sons would say things to me and pretty much treated like me very, very badly. They weren't willing to really help me. I couldn't really drive very well anymore with this disability. I had a stick shift, and I was disabled from the waist down, so I needed them to help, like go to the grocery stores and pay the bills and do different things like that I couldn't drive around and do myself anymore. And they didn't really want to do any of that. They didn't want to. They did not want to be around me. And I had a really difficult time figuring out why they were like that, because that's not how they normally were. And they didn't want to really help pack things, you know. My daughter ended up coming and helping pack because it was getting closer and closer. The mortgage was telling me, get out. And the mortgage company was telling me to get out, and I needed to hurry up and pack stuff. And there's one thing that I haven't mentioned that I really need to mention about this house. When we moved into the house, there was these 3 little hand-carved ducks. There was like a large duck and then 2 small ducks. and they were sitting on, gosh, I can't remember what you call it. It was like a little shelf right above between where the dining room and living room entry was. And I had made the mistake one time. I was dusting and cleaning things off, and I had made the mistake of picking that thing up and dusting it and cleaning it up. And the activity level in the house picked up for 3 days. As far as, I mean, it really, really got crazy in there as far as the spirits, shadows, doors slamming even faster and harder and longer period of time, and people getting touched, their hair getting pulled, pinched, and I was like, it acted like when we were moving, you know, the activity level would just increase, and I was like, wow, okay, so I couldn't figure out at first what I'd done.
When you left, did you take those ducks?
No, I didn't.
Just left them there.
Well, what I found out is over time, every time I picked up those ducks, that activity level would increase. And so I didn't pick them up anymore. I didn't touch them. I left them alone. Made sure everybody in the house knew, don't touch them, leave them alone. There's something about them. And when I left, they'll stay. Never touched them. I felt kind of bad about whoever was going to buy this house next, because I was like, I hope they don't throw away the stuff.
Yeah.
When they're doing modeling or what have you, I hope they don't throw away the stuff. If they do, they'll never be able to live in that house. They'll never be able to live. Nobody will. So anyway, towards the end, I guess something really, really bad happened. Towards the end, right before I moved. I mean, it wasn't bad enough that I was partially disabled and that I was also dealing with heart issues and all the activity, of course, had increased and that sort of stuff. My middle son that was living with me, he found a job and relocated somewhere else in a different town. My youngest had graduated from high school and relocated to a different town to go to college. My oldest, he actually had decided to move elsewhere. He didn't want to be anywhere around that house. He did not want to be reminded of the house. And I was left by myself a lot, waiting on my daughter to come get me and pack things up and help me relocate me. But there was one period of time that both my oldest and my youngest were in the house. It was in the evening hours. And honestly, I don't have a good memory of this. I'm going by what they said. They said that I had started cussing at them and And I was cussing God, and I was cussing them, and I was cussing their dead father, and I was absolutely, the voice that was coming out of me was not my voice. And I guess my eyes, something happened with my eyes, and they just started praying and praying and praying. And I don't know, I think they might have even tried some holy water or something. They thought I was, they said that they thought I was possessed with something. Something had possessed me. I don't remember any of it. I do remember sitting on the couch and waking up. I was sitting upright, and I woke up, and I was like, I was awake. It was like priorly I had been asleep, and I woke up, and here's my sons looking at me. They have this pale look on their faces, panic, pale look, like honestly, like I'd seen so many times as a result of being terrified in this house. And they kept asking me if I was okay, if I'm, am I okay? I'm okay. And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm oblivious to whatever's going on at the moment. But I don't know what that was. I don't know. I don't know if it was a possession or if it was some kind of, I don't know. I don't know. I don't.
That's terrifying.
And yeah, it is. It is. I still have, because I guess because I don't have any memory of it, and my sons, somewhat, a little bit, they told me is what I told you, but we never really have talked about it. We never really got deep into it. They are really reluctant to even talk about it, which is weird. That's odd, because generally, I think part of how we survived that was number one, me figuring out that as they were older, openly communicating to them that they could talk to me about stuff, and openly communicating to me about anything, and generally me being able to openly communicate to them about stuff that was going on in the house, things that we might have seen, things that were bothering me on that level. And I still think that, but for the grace of God, that we all managed to come out of there maybe a little bit scarred at times in places. I mean, but alive. And I know I sent you a bunch of pictures and stuff like that. Use whatever you can or whatever you want to use, or if it doesn't look like anything to you, then you can do what you want on that. But I don't want them back. They're yours. I am out of that disaster, that mess. My kids are out of that disaster. We are all doing really well. life is good. It's a blessing. It's a blessing.
Okay.
Anyway.
Well, Lynn, I really appreciate your story. Thank you for sharing with us. There's a lot of video to edit, and I will probably end up making some cuts in it, just for time constraints, and I know you want to remain anonymous. I will keep your name anonymous, and your location and all of that anonymous. But to my viewers,
well, I would appreciate that you keep, like you said, I would appreciate that you keep the location and everything anonymous, both houses and stuff. Now, on the one that I moved out of, my understanding is that, yes, somebody else has bought it, but nobody's been able to live in the house. Nobody's even currently in the house. So but it does belong to somebody. The other one, and that's something else I wanted to actually talk about. The very first house that I had lived in, that was I had experienced advice about. I had looked up this house, and apparently there is somebody living there in that house, and for the longest time it had been vacated after we left there. It had had several different fires. They never found out the cause. They were internal fires inside the house, even though nobody was living there. Nowadays, you might have said it might be homeless people, but not in this area. No, they don't have that kind of situation. And the town's really tiny, so yeah, they would know that. Plus we didn't have quite the homelessness that we have now. I mean, back then and in that time period. So they never did figure out what the actual cost for those fires. It had been remodeled twice. There is someone living in it now, and again, I don't want people to know where that's at, but
we don't disclose locations here, so you're safe. And we don't, if somebody wants to be anonymous, remain anonymous, we don't disclose their identity in any way.
Yeah, I would appreciate that. And you're probably wondering, why would I want to be anonymous after telling everybody all of this? Well, it's because I don't want to deal with it anymore. And honestly, this is actually the first time I've actually talked to someone else outside of my family about it. And I wanted people to know. I've been hearing a lot of people talking, about fake, and I look on YouTube and I was seeing all of this fake stuff going on, and I was like, well, no wonder people can't believe.
Yeah.
No wonder people won't believe. Guys, I had some horrific things happen inside of the house. And they were very, very real. Very real. And I can't even talk to people about it. I had to keep that all bottled up and pretend like everything was fine all those years. And that's what happens to people, because everybody ridicules them, thinks they're crazy. That's what happens to these people. We bottle it up. We get sick, physically ill even. And I know there's hope. There's out there, like I said, on the internet, there's a lot of that goes on, and it's all fun and games. But there are people out there that are going through some really tough times, and they really don't have anyone to talk to because of the circumstances and because of the fact that they don't have anyone that they feel comfortable being able to talk to without people thinking they're crazy or ridiculing them or what have you. Please don't be like that to people. Please don't be like that to people anymore. Really listen to them. Just in case they're actually telling you the truth and they really need your help. And even though you really can't do a whole lot about it, sometimes just listening to them is what they need.
Yeah.
And I thank you, Elijah, for allowing me to be able to tell my story and for listening to me. It's really helped me out a lot. I feel like a ton of bricks has been taken off of my shoulders just talking about it.
Well,
for
Linn,
the first time.
You're very welcome, and I really appreciate you coming on and taking the time to tell your story and sharing with us in particular. If there's anything else that you need, you have my contact information, and feel free to contact me and let me know, okay?
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you, audience, for listening. Bye.
Bye, Linn. Alright, guys, that is a very that's hard to swallow, all of that. I know if you guys have made it to the end of this series, it's been a long one, but that is 20 years. Linn lived in a haunted house, and even before that, she describes a house that she lived in, which was also very haunted, and even her kids experienced and her husbands experienced some things in these houses that were absolutely terrifying. It doesn't even begin to describe what kind of things that you heard. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there who have had experiences similar to this, and there's a lot of people out there who are skeptics, and that's okay. But for everybody out there who has a story to tell that's similar to this, there's so many, there's not a chance that all of them could be liars. There's no way. So I want you to think about the fact that for every person out there that is telling a lie and hoax, there could actually be somebody out there who is experiencing something for real, and those people may need your help. If not somebody to just listen to their story and hear them out. So, guys, if you would like to tell your story at 85 Studios, it doesn't have to be real long, it doesn't have to be real short, it can be anything, any experience that you would like to share with us. Feel free, we're here for you. Go to our Facebook page. It's facebook.com/85studios1, or talk to us on Twitter. Send us a direct message at Twitter. At 85 Studios YouTube on Twitter. And I'm kind of shaken up by that story, guys. I really am. I'm not gonna lie to you. That was scary. Some of the things that she described were absolutely horrific in a lot of ways. So, With that, guys, please like and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos that we make, and leave us a comment down below so that you can we can see what your views are on this topic and the other videos that we share. I thank you, and you all have a great night.